Good morning and a warm welcome to all of you. Welcome to the Social Innovation Summit, a conference organized by the Center for Social Impact and Philanthropy at Ashoka University. We have two exciting days planned for you, and we are keen to have this opportunity to bring together implementers, donors, and innovators, which is all of you in this room. This is an opportunity for all of you to learn from each other and collaborate with each other, at least find ways to collaborate in future. If you see, this is a green conference, so we're trying to make it as green as possible. So you have bottles in your bag. We don't have any plastic anywhere. So if you need water, you can fill those bottles or take a glass of water from the side. Without further ado, I would now like to invite Ingrid Srinath, Director of CSIP.
That's great. Thank you, Bindi. I would be remiss if I didn't, besides just warmly welcome, rewind Ingrid. First of all, I'm so grateful that we're doing this in Bombay. If this was any other city in this country, this room would be less than a third full, and people would spend the rest of the day trickling in. So give yourselves a huge round of applause for just being punctual and sticking to your commitments. I would be remiss if I didn't take a minute to talk about the university that I represent. Ashoka is not unfamiliar to many of you, but it takes very seriously this notion of being a transformational institute. It's, as many of you know, a not-for-profit university. 110 different philanthropists came together to create this remarkable entity. The ethics and the idea of democratic governance runs through every aspect of the university, from the governing council through to student government, through to literally every aspect of teaching and learning and working there. It's the first liberal arts and sciences private university to take this approach, and one of the ways in which it's transformational is changing the game. Creating a new model for how private higher education can be funded and how private universities can be run. There's a massive emphasis on diversity, a massive emphasis on the environment. It's an institution that really tries to live the values it preaches. It's not surprising then that Ashoka became the home to the first academic center to study social impact and philanthropy, not just in India, but in South Asia. Uh, it, it, I'm constantly surprised by this, given how long we've had philanthropy in our region and given how much social impact activity there is. Why did it take till 2016 for anyone to think of putting together some study of it? But I'm grateful that they did, and I'm grateful, therefore, to have the opportunity to do the work we do. Um, as you know, we don't have very good data on these sectors in India. To the best of our knowledge, and this is what Bain and Dasra tell us, there's about $10 billion of private philanthropy in India, dwarfed by the amount of government spending, but growing rapidly. We're also, of course, as many of you are involved in, seeing this blurring of boundaries, if you will, between purely financial return-driven investment at the one hand and pure philanthropy at the other, on the other hand, and a whole continuum, really, of options in between. On the civil society side of the fence, civil society, its institutions have never, I want to hazard to say, never been more critical to our democracy and to our society. And I think we sometimes forget the number of different roles that we expect civil society to play. It's not just a service provider, not just that last mile delivery mechanism. It also must be supported to perform roles of watchdog, of advocate, of incubator, of capacity builder, of amplifier of marginal voices, of a champion of just citizenship, of a definer, if you will, of the standards we want to follow as a society. So when we started the center 3 years ago, what we found was really this absolute dearth of knowledge. And so research just into figuring out how much money is there? Where does it come from? Who is giving it? Where does it go? What is it used for? Just those basic 101 level questions was where we started our research endeavors. The second piece we found missing was the lack of functioning networks. So stuff like this, where people who are interested in the same topic can simply get to know each other, build trust, build relationships, find opportunities to collaborate, doesn't exist, certainly not to the extent that we need it. One of the casualties of the fact that we don't have networks is that we don't have norms. So the only norms the sectors follow are those that the government mandates. So we all file our income tax returns, and we all send in our FCRA updates, and we all talk to the Charities Commissioner as often as he requires us to, but that's it. There are no norms on transparency, no norms on compensation, no norms on ethical communication, and all of that really are areas in a sense that the center is trying to address. Finally, we do two things in the capacity building space, because it would be remiss as a university center to not do some capacity building. Some of you here in the room have attended the SNMI, the Strategic Nonprofit Management India program that we run together with Harvard Business School for nonprofit leaders. And at the other end of the scale, we also support young social entrepreneurs starting off in their journey. So every year we support a cohort of about 10 or 15 graduates who are literally just embarking on that journey. We see ourselves as doing four things, and I swear to you this will be the last sort of word from your sponsor that you will get, as enhancing capacity, capability, credibility, and connections, to sum it up, if that makes it easier to remember. And we see ourselves, when we distill it all down, why do we exist? We exist in order to ensure that Indian philanthropy and Indian civil society can find its highest purpose. We're fortunate that we have some really cool donors who permit us the luxury of core funding, long-term funding, unrestricted funding, all those, the holy grail, if you will, of philanthropy. And in addition to the names you see up here for this conference in particular, we also have support from the BMW Foundation. I was just talking to someone outside about how rare it is to find a foundation that actually focuses on convening as its chosen way, its chosen intervention. There's a number of other partners that we have non-financial relationships with. Some of them are in the room, some of them not. But you can see that it represents quite a range of international and local players. Coming to the theme of today's conference, there's so much buzz around this idea of technology and the nonprofit sector that I don't know how anyone keeps their head on straight. There's artificial intelligence, there's blockchain, there's robotics, there's drones delivering God knows what to whom. There's satellite imagery, there's GPS, there's GIS, there's, it sort of, my brain shuts down sometimes when I try to think about it. What's clear, I think, when it comes to technology today in 2019 is, one, it's ubiquitous. It surrounds us. We're hooked to 5 or 6 devices at any given point in time. It's confusing, even to the experts. It seems to offer great promise, but it comes with strong downsides as well. There's as much skepticism as there is optimism. And yet some people see this as this tool, these tools that are going to transform humanity almost. Clearly ignoring it isn't an option, particularly as we see crises escalate. New or really not so new crises getting significantly worse, and old ones not going anywhere anytime soon. We're certainly seeing a set of issues reaching tipping points. And yet, even those of us that watch this world quite closely are at a loss on how to come to grips with it. Our funding models are certainly out of sync with the way change is happening in the 21st century. Donors' perspectives can sometimes, especially on issues like overhead, can sometimes be stuck in the Middle Ages. And while there are all these interesting little things happening in different communities, whether it's the donor community, there's business tech, there's nonprofit tech, there's social enterprises, there's NGOs, there's the people on whose behalf we purport to work, and yet they're disconnected, fragmented, unable to connect to each other. I was at a Stanford Social Innovation Conference some months ago, where I came across where Henry Timms, erstwhile 92nd Street Y, put this slide up. Beyond the lack of connections, beyond the lack of knowledge, beyond the lack of understanding, is a fundamental disconnect in worldviews between the people that do tech and the people that do philanthropy / civil society or social change. In the tech world, it's become popular to talk about moving fast and breaking things. In our world, we take the exact opposite approach. We need to, because the people we work with, there's real human impact on real people of every choice we make, one. Also, we lack the resources to make big mistakes. And so we need to be much more calibrated in the investments we make in technology. How many people in this room feel they have within their organizations the capacity to evaluate some of these new emerging technology? Raise your hand if you think you have that capacity in-house. Wow. So that in one moment is the reason this summit came about. It's like, can we start to build those connections, start to get familiar with this terrain, start to work across our different domains of expertise and thematic interest, perhaps spark innovation. There's lots of innovation happening out there. You'll hear over the next 2 days fantastic stories of great things that people are being able to achieve. We need more. We need them to work together. We need funders to take interest in what they're doing. We need investors to say, hey, 1 second, this is something that I need to pay more attention to. But most importantly, we need to really align, if you will, our worldviews and values. That's my bit for today, and you won't hear from me again, I promise. Just yesterday, I came across this saying. For those of you who don't speak Maori, this is what it means. And before we launch into all these esoteric discussions around technology and science and cool new, shiny new toys, I just want to remind us that finally, it's all about people. Thank you.